In our modern world, an average day may consist of FaceTiming family and friends, playing games online, or asking Alexa to complete a task for us. These tasks have only become a part of our lives in the last decade or so, but they were envisioned and shown on screen way back in 1968, all thanks to the mind and visionary talents of the iconic Stanley Kubrick and his film 2001: A Space Odyssey. Of course, 2001 was just one of many films Kubrick made in his illustrious career. He was a filmmaker who broke the mold, followed his own rules, and was always looking for a new path to take as he planned his next film. If you thought his movies were complicated, deep, and full of meaning, then just imagine what the whole production was like. From page one and all the way until the final cut, Kubrick was all in, and a man often described as a perfectionist and control freak, all in a positive way. Take a dive into the life and career of one of the most brilliant minds in Hollywood, as we uncover his process and all of the hidden meanings and messages he has inserted into his movies. In 1968, imagining a vision of the future was a lot more complicated due to a major lack of technology compared to what we have today. For Kubrick's work on 2001: A Space Odyssey, he was working with almost nothing. The history of film at the time was filled with robots and aliens more based off comic books than scientific research. Modern technology was limited to small television sets, radios, and tethered phone lines. Stepping into the production set just outside of London, England, we can see just how much work went into his movie. Separate offices were dedicated just to wardrobe, special effects, and building sets. One of the best ways to describe the production of 2001: A Space Odyssey would be organized chaos. It's easy to get lost, confused, or even tell what kind of movie is being made. But there's one man who can handle it all: Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick seamlessly goes from role to role, nixing costume ideas, consulting with special effects supervisors, and getting calls from NASA experts about space. But how exactly did he get to this point? Known as one of the most innovative and visually appealing filmmakers of a generation, the works of Stanley Kubrick will be studied and examined for multiple generations to come. Born in New York City in 1928, Kubrick had a good middle-class upbringing in the Bronx, as his father was a doctor. Just like Kubrick would later shun away from the typical conventions of filmmaking, he also did not like the process of traditional learning. He skated through high school, finishing with low averages and denying him any chance of getting into a good college, let alone any college at all. His poor grades weren't for a lack of intelligence. It was boredom and disdain for the classroom setting. Thanks to a gift of a camera from his father at the age of 13, Kubrick began seeing the world through a lens and became obsessed with the medium. In just a few short years, he sold photographs to Look magazine and was eventually offered a full-time position with the company at the age of 17. For Kubrick, this is the gift and choice that changed his life forever. When he wasn't doing photography work for the company, he was studying and self-teaching on a wide variety of subjects, which included both photography and videography. Word of mouth eventually reached Kubrick about the potential profits of making documentary films, and he was instantly hooked. His first documentary short followed the day in the life of a professional boxer. With very little budget and no wiggle room, Kubrick went through the filmmaking process basically on his own. He called Kodak to learn about film rentals, rigged his own amateur lighting rigs, and set up all the cameras and shots as needed. He was essentially an everyman on set, and would eventually turn these low-budget necessities into big-budget habits as his film career grew. His attention to detail and ability to see the smaller parts move along with the big pictures is a habit instilled in Kubrick at a very young age. As a young boy and teenager, Kubrick became a skilled professional in the game of chess. Through the game, he learned how to mentally prepare moves, pay attention to small details, and strategize as needed. Kubrick became so skilled at chess, he used it as a means of making money at local New York City parks, when he wasn't shooting photos or trying to make films. After completing a few other documentaries and getting big-screen premieres before feature-length films, Kubrick knew he wanted more. Seeing more money in the feature-length movies, Kubrick raised enough money to make 1953's Fear and Desire. While the film didn't make a profit, it set him off on the right path. He was starting to get noticed more and more, and eventually directed the film Killer's Kiss, along along with The Killing. These films were made with extremely limited budgets, low-salary actors, and no full support from movie studios. After taking the helm on directing the film Spartacus, Kubrick took off. Money was offered to him, and he could make films with the scope and vision he imagined. Over the next couple of decades, Kubrick would take on all kinds of genres, including drama with Lolita, nuclear war with Dr. Strangelove, science fiction with 2001: A Space Odyssey, dystopian future with A Clockwork Orange, historical romance with Barry Lyndon, horror with The Shining, the Vietnam War with Full Metal Jacket, and modern-day romance and mystery with Eyes Wide Shut. To call his collection of movies epic would be an understatement. Besides Dr. Strangelove, which clocks in at a brisk hour and a half, a majority of Kubrick's films clock in at well over 2 hours. Both Spartacus and Barry Lyndon are over 3 hours long, giving stories time to breathe, expand, and flow naturally on the screen. When Kubrick makes a film, he's not looking to fit the final cut into some type of box or conformed runtime. His main goal is to tell a satisfactory story, no matter how long or short the movie ends up being. His controlling nature over a project not only makes the films long, but the production times are almost unheard of, especially in today's age of filmmaking. Before the first scenes of a project are even filmed, Kubrick may have already put months or years into development. Looking back at 2001: A Space Odyssey, the preparation process helped make the film so iconic and beloved as it is today. Before a script was set in place, Kubrick collaborated with Arthur C. Clarke to first come up with a novel based around the story. Basing movies off novels or plays was often Kubrick's preference, as he was able to break down characters, scenes, and story elements a lot easier. The research going into the movie was a massive scale, and something Kubrick would implement for every one of his projects. To help create the most advanced technology and visual look of the future, Kubrick was in constant contact with NASA officials, scientists, and technology companies all over the world. To help plan out special effects and see what could be done or what could be pushed further, Kubrick saw film after film, and almost anything in the sci-fi genre just to get a feel for things. And the same goes for the music in the film. Kubrick wanted to create something that sounds futuristic, but wouldn't be too distracting on the screen. He didn't have assistants call together some recommendations. He went record by record, playing each track and taking notes on certain music aspects he envisioned for the movie. His perfectionist style extended down through the wardrobe, set building, and all the little details it takes to create a film. No job was too big or too small for Kubrick on a project. A movie directed by Stanley Kubrick is often always described by mentioning him. It's a Kubrick film, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, or Kubrick's epic period drama, because along with the work he puts in behind the scenes, he's also painstakingly detailed in the work he does to create on-screen visuals. His movies were created and intended for the big screen, and often the best viewing experience of his films comes from seeing them this way. By watching on the big screen, more of his visual trademarks are seen, appreciated, and absorbed by the viewer. One of Kubrick's most iconic shots while filmmaking is the single-point perspective. The shot is lined up so the furthest point in the scene is directly in the center of the frame. Through these shots, you may have characters walk directly in the center, showcase a piece of action, or use the frame to build a sense of uniformity. The use of symmetry in these shots helps create great visuals. Buildings and sets often have a symmetrical look with doors, halls, and patterns. In The Shining, the hallway scene where Danny rides a tricycle around a corner and stops short of a young set of twins has perfect visual symmetry. By keeping the twins in the distance and at the focal point of the shot, an allure and mystery is built up as we cannot take our eyes off the set of creepy characters. Whenever we see the large black monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey, it is often shot with single-point perspective, giving it importance in the scene. The same thing is done for Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in Full Metal Jacket. As he marches up and down the line of his new recruits, our focus is on him, and the framed shots showcase how important his character is. Another way Kubrick follows the journey of a character is through their physical journey. Back in the 1950s and 60s, cameras were either positioned to a fixed location or required dollies to capture footage. Kubrick ventured out from this style, creating more intimate scenes with the use of a Steadicam. Filming a movie on Steadicam requires fluid movements, but has the freedom to go nearly anywhere since the use of dollies and tripods are eliminated. Kubrick wasn't the first director to use Steadicam, but he definitely mastered the process and helped lead a forefront of visual filmmakers who would do do the same. The Steadicam allows viewers to get intimate with a moment or character. Cameras would follow a soldier as they pushed their way through a crowd, or with Tom Cruise as he walked down the streets in Eyes Wide Shut. The use of the Steadicam also allowed Kubrick to capture long and unprecedented tracking shots. A low perspective of the Steadicam follows Danny as he bikes through the halls and various parts of the hotel. We see the use of the Steadicam in the maze scenes, when they're lush and green, along with the snow-covered scenes at the end of the movie. In his 1957 film Paths of Glory, we follow a general as he makes his way through a group of troops, stops to talk to some, and then the action continues for nearly 2 minutes, all in one continuous shot. And not only does the camera seamlessly follow with the walk of the general, but there is so much more going on in the scene. Kubrick has timed out every detail and small movement to move along perfectly with the dialogue and action. We see 2 explosions in the background, dozens of soldiers preparing weapons, and others in various forms of formation. And all of this is done with practical on-set effects. But it's all a part of the epic flow and storytelling Stanley Kubrick uses in his movies. The one-take shots have become a signature staple of Kubrick, and often used as a stylish choice in movies today, one that has become common enough for people to barely notice or register. Brian De Palma has used this style for several of his films, including a 12-minute one-take scene in the movie Snake Eyes. The martial arts film The Protector features a fight scene winding up a staircase that lasts over 4 minutes long. Kubrick's use of these shots has definitely had some influence on other filmmakers, along with other early greats like Alfred Hitchcock. And of course, the Steadicam or single shots from Kubrick are not the only tool used in his filmmaking. In what was often viewed as too amateur, stylish, or fake, Kubrick embraced the zoom shot over the years. Traditionally, if a filmmaker wanted to move in close on something or pull away for a big reveal, a dolly would be used to capture the footage. Kubrick preferred keeping the camera stationary and zooming directly from the lens. His zoom shots became an epic storytelling tool. Some of the best examples of his in-camera zooms are seen in the 1975 film Barry Lyndon. The film follows the life of Barry as he fights in wars, falls in love, and the trials and tribulations surrounding his life. Many scenes start close in on Barry's face, linger there for a few moments, and then dramatically zoom out to reveal a lush scene in a much bigger world. Not only are these scenes incredible to look at, but they capture a sense of character, their place in the world, and a much bigger story. When the right moment came, Kubrick would also use a zoom-in shot to capture a performer's face and the emotion going through them. He was not afraid to let shots linger. Audiences could really absorb the scenes and take them in, all without pressing pause. Another great zoom shot in Barry Lyndon is seen in the footage of Barry marching along with other soldiers. We start off close in on Barry, understanding his personal journey with the war and battles, only to slowly zoom out, revealing he's just one of many soldiers going through the same journey. Kubrick's perspective with the camera also led to one of his most iconic shots: the Kubrick stare. A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, Barry Lyndon, 2001, Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut. It's hard to find one of his films without the close-up shot of an empty and almost emotionless stare, typically from one of the main characters. The cameras are angled just below their face, shooting up at them in an intimate way, often paired with a questionable smile. Some of the best examples include Malcolm McDowell in A Clockwork Orange, or Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Then there's one of the most unforgettable in Full Metal Jacket. Private Pyle has had enough of the insults and torture in boot camp. Through the use of the Kubrick stare, we see he has fully gone over the edge. And just a few minutes later, the character is killed off due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The Kubrick has become so iconic, it has been used in dozens and dozens of movies beyond Kubrick's own creations. Think of the Joker in The Dark Knight, Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, Eric Draven in The Crow, Wolverine in the X-Men movies, or in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Filmmakers looking to add edge, mystery, or intensity to a character often resort to the useful Kubrick stare. And while Kubrick captured a variety of shots on set, he also loved to play around in the editing room to further add to his experimentation and film design. 2001: A Space Odyssey was the ultimate film experiment for Kubrick, and his use of editing tools was not just for the gimmick, but as a way to help mold the storytelling. Early on in the film, we see the dawn of man with a group of apes who discover how to use bones as weapons. When one of the bones is thrown up in the air, the shot transitions to a similarly sized and shaped spaceship floating through space. The match cut sequence was the perfect transition to showcase the evolution of man and how far technology has come over the years. Kubrick also loves to play with time in his films. A Clockwork Orange is a prime example of this. In the scene where Alex launches a surprise attack on his droogs, Kubrick uses slow motion to focus on the hits, looks of surprise, and the bodies dropping into the water. At another point in the movie, Alex connects with two girls at a record shop, and the relations in an apartment are sped up at an extremely fast speed, all while a musical symphony plays in the background. These storytelling tools are all a part of the visual process for Kubrick, and are more than experiments. They are deliberate choices the director makes to convey certain emotions and scenes. Another deliberate choice Kubrick works with in every one of his films? The lighting. When Kubrick first started out in the film industry, there was a standard a majority of films followed: the 3-light setup. A main light would shine on performers, a second light would eliminate shadows from the sides, and an overhead fill light would help eliminate any other shadows. For Kubrick, the effect on the big screen of this so-called perfect lighting resulted in emotionless acting and visuals. The movies felt like a production and was placing a barrier between the audience experience and what was happening on screen. This is why, for a majority of his films, Kubrick worked hand in hand with his lighting crew to capture real and authentic lighting. As he made each film, he focused and expanded on the way lights were used, oftentimes using unprecedented methods which have now become commonplace. Let's go back to Barry Lyndon. A period drama like this could easily look like a stage production if the lighting is done wrong, but Kubrick set out to make an authentic experience. Just like he did with 2001: A Space Odyssey, Kubrick got in touch with NASA, this time seeking out some of their best lenses. Capturing the darkness of outer space is hard without using a lens with an extremely wide aperture, and this is exactly what Kubrick was seeking for Barry Lyndon. More specifically, the director wanted to shoot a number of scenes using just candlelight, keeping it authentic to the 1700s. Along with candlelights, Kubrick was able to shoot with the flames of a fireplace, giving scenes realism not ever before seen in a movie of its kind. Even the daylight scenes were lit and shot to emulate the sun as closely as possible. Instead of rigging up lights in the inside of buildings for interior shots, Kubrick mounted lights on the outside and had them shine in through the windows to give the illusion of a natural sun. Add in gorgeous camera shots, authentic props, and detailed costumes to make Kubrick's film a multi-award winner at the Academy Awards, with category wins in production design, cinematography, and best costume design. Similar lighting design has been implemented on Kubrick's other films. While Barry Lyndon used fireplaces for natural light, Full Metal Jacket took things on a much grander scale, creating glowing silhouettes of soldiers as they march past burning buildings during the closing moments of the movie. The Christmas setting of Eyes Wide Shut also helped Kubrick create a lot of natural light options, especially with the use of Christmas lights strung up on many parts of the set. And while Kubrick makes these shots look seamless and effortless, a whole lot of effort goes into his production. Being known as a perfectionist comes with a lot of planning, a lot of strategy, and a whole lot of extra takes. Kubrick burned through more film than you can imagine, almost becoming obsessive with the way shots were taken over and over again. Just look at the making of The Shining. Kubrick wanted Shelley Duvall to really feel the emotional torment her fictional husband was putting her through, shooting some of the climactic scenes over 100 times as Duvall broke down, cried, and put her all into the performance. Who can forget the bathroom scene where Duvall hides all panicked as Jack Nicholson busts down the door with an axe? Well, the scene itself took nearly 100 takes, and Nicholson had to bust his way through 60 different doors just to get the scene right. And the axe-down doors were just the minimal parts of the painstaking set design. Kubrick didn't seek out the perfect hotel to shoot his interiors in. He had one built on sound stages, creating all types of hallways, rooms, and elements of the massive hotel. By starting from scratch, Kubrick could approve every painstaking detail, including those iconic carpet patterns in the hallway. Even the maze itself was a creation from the mind of Kubrick. In Stephen King's original novel, there were giant animal-shaped bushes which attacked young Danny during the climactic moments of the movie. Kubrick replaced this element, along with several other aspects of the book. His maze creation was not only a visual metaphor, but it helped create the intense chase scene between a deranged father and his panicked son. The maze itself was crafted with fake bushes and designs, and was confusing enough so that several cast and crew members got lost in it themselves while preparing to film scenes. And no matter how long it took to build sets or create these highly detailed creations, Kubrick often tore or burned them down just to rebuild them again for another one of his movies, or if lots were needed for the next big production. This is exactly what happened for the production of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Knowing what a classic the movie is today, today, imagine how special it would be to keep some of the sets, props, and creations used for the movies. Just look at the detail put into his Dawn of Man opening sequence. Performers were placed in heavy costume designs to make them look like realistic monkeys. Kubrick wanted them to look as lifelike as possible and went through dozens of different designs while working with top makeup teams. But the makeup was not enough. Each of the performers hired, a wide range of actors, dancers, and mimes, spent months studying the apes, visiting a local zoo, and learning how to accurately mimic their movements. This is months of work for an opening segment which lasts less than 10 minutes. And while modern-day films like The Jungle Book or Life of Pi are able to digital insert or CG the use of wild animals into a production, things were much different for Space Odyssey. One of the first shots showcases a leopard jumping on one of the apes in an attack scene. There is no dummy ape or special effects in the shot. For months, Kubrick had a circus performer named Terry Duggan train with both a lion and a leopard in preparation for the scene. Duggan was an experienced animal trainer who could get these animals to play fight with him in a way that would look convincing on the screen. And the scene was actually shot with other performers in the far background, despite rumors of them being matted on. Later, a dead horse's body was painted to look like a zebra, and the leopard was laid across it for another shot. Naturally, a big-budget movie could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to shoot before post-production begins. With Kubrick's style and attention to detail, you're looking at far longer shoots. Let's look at his final film, Eyes Wide Shut. The movie took almost 15 months to shoot, with Kubrick pinning down every last detail. In his 70s at this point, the director put his all into his final project, just like he had done with other productions. The Shining included over a year of production, with almost daily script changes, and 200 days on set. The film was also shot in chronological order, allowing these changes to get made without having to rely on reshoots or edits later on. One of his longest productions may have been Barry Lyndon, a film which took almost a full year to film, on top of all the pre-production work and set building. Kubrick's success allowed him to use his budgets wisely and get the production schedule he worked best with. You would imagine Stanley Kubrick's perfectionism, control, and attention to detail transitioned to his home life, but this was not the case. According to his own daughter, in a Reddit AMA no less, he was calm, relaxed, and easygoing at home. Early in his career, Kubrick met his third wife, actress Christiane Harlan, while filming Paths of Glory. The two were married for 40 years, had 2 children together, and Christiane also had a daughter from a previous relationship. As Kubrick grew his family, he became more reclusive between films. Once to move to London to film Lolita, he ended up staying there permanently, rarely wanting to fly out of the country or leave his home. Kubrick enjoyed watching American football games, eating things like tuna sandwiches, and reading book upon book from his massive library. Guest houses and other parts of his home became his editing suites and production offices. All of this from a man who used to have his pilot license and once flew solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Things changed as he grew older, and Kubrick all but abandoned the New York City life he grew up in. Keeping things in London and England became a priority for the director, so much so that when it came time to film the Vietnam set Full Metal Jacket, Kubrick has replicas of the country built right on the sound stages in London. It's incredible to see the detail that went into the transformation of the set. And in the 1990s, Kubrick could have made one last trip to New York, but chose to duplicate exact city blocks for his production of Eyes Wide Shut. He wanted the streets and creation of the city to be so accurate, he sent production crews to measure sidewalk lengths and take a large number of pictures to use within the production. Even if you know the movie is set in London, it's hard to tell because of the detail put into the massive set designs. Even though Kubrick is focused on the visuals, set design, and capturing the perfect moment from his actors, there's also a strong connection with the themes and messages in his films. As beautiful as they are to look at, fans and critics have analyzed his movies for years, discovering hidden meanings and messages from a variety of his works. 2 of his most analyzed movies, 2001 and The Shining, there is a lot of ambiguity in both of these films. For 2001, there are the large black monoliths that land in various locations at various times. Do these monoliths inspire others, send messages, or are they a godlike symbol? And then there are the theories that the mystery of the monolith is just that, an unsolvable mystery. A mystery explaining that Earth and space as a whole is filled with unsolved mysteries. Sometimes we don't need to have an explanation for things. They just are what they are. The film also presents the Star Child. What does this rebirth represent? Is this a creation from God, or does it have an atheist point of view, explaining science creates all, including human life? Kubrick never offers answers, and that's the point. These films have been analyzed to a point where even more absurd theories have come out about them. One of the craziest, 2001: A Space Odyssey, is all about the human relationship with food. Food is consumed during a number of the speaking scenes, talked about in other scenes, and plays an essential role in character arcs. When we view astronaut David Bowman in old age, one of the last things he does is eat a real cooked meal, not the space mash he's been consuming in prior years. The Shining has just as many theories around it, so many that the film is broken down and dissected in the documentary Room 237. Stanley Kubrick made some significant changes from Stephen King's novel, and many of them have led to a wide variety of theories. One of the bigger ones is the connection to Native Americans. The Overlook Hotel is built on Native American land, and the red blood emerging is representative of English settlers killing and driving Native Americans off of their homelands. One theory focuses on the Holocaust and the film's connection to 1942, or the year the Nazis' final solution fully took place. One of Danny's shirts has the number 42 on it. Room 237 can be broken down to 2 × 3 × 7 to equal 42. And early in the film, Wendy and Danny watch the movie The Summer of 42. Other connections have included the Apollo 11 moon landing, the Illuminati, or even CIA mind control experiments. Then there's the theory people try to apply to every film. It was all a dream. Kubrick's detailed work on every small detail does help build these theories up, and really allows people to dive deep in on a frame-by-frame basis. A lot of Stanley Kubrick film theories are also based around props placed in the film. With The Shining, people point out the number of bear props used in the movie. There's Winnie the Pooh toys, stuffed animals, a giant bearskin rug, and a strange man in a bear mask. These props were purposely put there, but Kubrick leaves their significance a mystery, leading to speculation about child abuse, the loss of innocence, or other illusions about the giant beast. A similar use of props was used in Full Metal Jacket. Despite being released by Warner Brothers, the movie is filled with all types of Mickey Mouse references. There are small statues, signs, and symbols of Mickey scattered throughout the film. Not to mention the closing scene when the soldiers march down the road of burning buildings while all singing the Mickey Mouse theme song. Mickey Mouse. Sure, the theme song is a great representation of Kubrick's ability to convey a little dark humor, but the innocence and cartoon nature of Mickey Mouse also showcases themes about the war, these soldiers' part in it, and the innocence of these characters caught up in something much bigger than they can imagine. Visual contradictions are often a theme found in Kubrick's films. Andy is clearly an evil character in A Clockwork Orange, but he wears bright white suits, and scenes are often filmed with upbeat music. In Eyes Wide Shut, characters wear the masks and reveal their true self and feelings rather than being the fake selves they are when the mask is off. Eyes Wide Shut also marked the end of a great career for Kubrick. Just days after screening a cut to Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise, and Warner Bros., Kubrick passed away at the age of 70 on March 7, 1999. Following his death, his wife released an art book about the director, featuring all types of rare pictures and images throughout his career. Much like his personal life, the funeral and memorial service was kept private, shrouding his life into one last mystery, much like the films he created. Even before his death, Kubrick was one of the most beloved film directors, but his fame and significance in Hollywood has only risen over the years. There have been dozens of books released just about him, along with his work featured in numerous other projects. As seen, his dedication to his projects was very deep, and there are many times where projects were canceled or developed for years without going into production. One of his biggest unrealized projects was AI, artificial intelligence. The film about a young robot boy was developed between Spielberg and Kubrick, but Kubrick's death prevented him from seeing it come to light. Over the years, there have been rumors about several screenplays and projects Kubrick never developed. Naturally, Hollywood is trying to make these screenplays into full productions, but nothing has quite gained traction as of yet. Spielberg did manage to get another great Kubrick dedication into his films with the recent release of Ready Player One. A long segment in the film recreates Kubrick's film sets as accurately as possible and references a lot of key moments, including the River of Blood. This is just just one of many ways Kubrick's films will forever live on in pop culture. Another one of Kubrick's biggest unfilmed projects was Aryan Papers. The film was going to be a dramatic look at the Holocaust, and was just weeks away from filming when Kubrick shelved the project due to Spielberg's Schindler's List coming out first. Kubrick did not want to compete or be compared to another Holocaust film when the historical significance is already so dark and meaningful on its own right. But even without the projects that came to fruition, Kubrick's career feels complete. He has tackled some of the biggest genres in film and has reshaped the way other filmmakers look at their movies and develop projects. And if you go back, way back to before Kubrick even started, a lot of his success can be attributed to his mastery of the game of chess. He looked at each movie like a chess match, having the ability to see the whole board while guiding the paths of each piece. He had the mental ability to plan ahead, see obstacles in his way, and execute some of the most beloved movies in history. We may never get the answers to certain themes, messages, or choices he made with his movies, but this was always his point: to provide much more than a short viewing experience, to step outward, look inward, and see much deeper than the initial story presented on screen. Whether it's a film class, public screening, or online forum, Kubrick's vision has come to life. We share his films, enjoy his stories, and use his creations as a blueprint for how to make films. His style will live on through the creations of other filmmakers, and analyzing how these films were made gives us a glimpse into his genius mind. So, what's your favorite Stanley Kubrick film? And what messages do you believe his movies convey? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Screen Rant on YouTube so you can stay up to date with our awesome videos. Thanks for watching.